I was hanging a shelf in my bedroom when my drill bit went straight through the wall and hit nothing but air. Not a stud, not insulation, just empty space where there shouldn't have been any. My name's Alex. I'm 32, and I'd been living in my apartment for almost 2 years. It's an older building, built sometime in the 1950s. The kind with thick plaster walls and weird angles that don't quite make sense if you really look at the floor plan. I always figured the odd little jog in my bedroom wall was just old construction being old construction. Turns out, I was wrong. After the drill went through, I pulled my hand back and just stared at the hole for a second. I got a flashlight and looked inside, and instead of seeing insulation or wiring, I saw a few feet of open space, then what looked like the back of another wall. That wasn't supposed to be there. My bedroom shares that wall with the hallway, and the hallway is barely wide enough for 2 people to pass each other. There was no way there was a hidden gap that size. I called my landlord first, mostly to ask if there'd been renovations before I moved in. He seemed confused and said the building hadn't been touched structurally in decades. Just cosmetic stuff, paint, flooring, appliances. He didn't know anything about extra space behind that wall, and honestly, sounded a little unsettled that I was asking.
That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went back with a bigger flashlight and made the hole slightly wider, just enough to get a phone camera through. What I saw made my stomach drop. There was a narrow room back there, maybe 4 feet wide and 8 feet long, completely sealed off with no visible door or entrance from anywhere in the apartment. I spent the next few days trying to figure out how something like this could exist without anyone knowing. I pulled up old property records at the city archive, and it turned out my building had been converted from a single-family home into apartments back in the 1960s. The original floor plans showed my unit's layout completely differently. There used to be a small maid's room or storage room right where that hidden space was, with its own door that opened into what's now a completely different apartment on the other side. At some point during the conversion, someone had walled off both entrances to that space instead of properly removing it, probably to save money or because it was easier than reconfiguring the whole floor. Whatever the reason, that little room had been sealed inside the building's walls for over 60 years, invisible unless you happened to drill through drywall at exactly the wrong spot. I debated just patching the hole and forgetting about it, but curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to open it up properly instead of just peering through a hole. I cut a section of drywall out completely and used a small headlamp to actually climb inside. The room was dusty, obviously untouched for decades, but it wasn't empty. There was an old wooden chair, rotted at the legs, and a small shelf built into the wall with a few glass jars on it, cloudy with age. In the corner, there was a small metal box, rusted at the hinges. I sat there for a second, just letting it sink in. I was standing inside a space that hadn't been touched or seen by another human being since probably the 1960s. It felt less like finding a secret room and more like opening a tiny time capsule that nobody had meant to leave behind. I carried the box back into my actual apartment and pried it open with a flathead screwdriver, since the latch had rusted solid. Inside were a handful of photographs, brittle and yellowed, a few handwritten letters, and a small brass key that didn't seem to match anything in the box or the room. The photographs showed a woman, maybe in her 30s, standing in what was clearly the original house before it became apartments. Based on the clothing and the look of the photos, I'd guess they were from sometime in the 1950s. The letters were addressed to a name I didn't recognize, written in careful cursive, mostly ordinary. Updates about a garden, a sick relative, plans to visit family. Nothing dramatic, nothing that screamed mystery. But one of the letters was different. It wasn't finished. It cut off mid-sentence. No signature. Like whoever was writing it had simply stopped and never came back to it. The last line just said, "I need to tell you something before he gets home. Because if I don't say it now, I don't think I'll..." and then nothing. Just blank paper after that. I did some digging using the name on the letters and eventually tracked down a local historical society that had old records for the neighborhood. It turned out the woman in the photos had lived in that house with her husband in the 1950s before quietly moving away sometime later. No dramatic story, no unsolved mystery, no scandal. Based on the records, she'd simply relocated to another state for a job opportunity for her husband, and the house was sold shortly after. The unfinished letter wasn't some ominous cliffhanger after all. It turned out, based on a follow-up letter that had survived in a different archive, that she'd just been interrupted by her husband coming home earlier than expected, and had simply forgotten to go back and finish it before they packed up and moved.
The thing she wanted to tell him, according to a completed version of a nearly identical letter found in the archive, was that she was pregnant. That's it. No cover-up, no crime, no dark secret hidden in the walls. Just an unfinished sentence from someone excited to share good news, sealed away by accident when a maid's room got boarded up during a renovation decades later. Sometimes you go looking for something dramatic, and what you actually find is just a person. A regular person who lived a regular life, whose most private, unfinished thought happened to get trapped behind drywall for 60 years, simply because nobody bothered to remove an old storage room properly. I patched the hole back up, but I kept the photographs and the letters. Something about them felt like they deserved to be kept, rather than thrown away or resealed in the dark again. So, Reddit, would you have opened it, or patched the hole and pretended you never saw anything? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.